right, welcome back to part 2 of Bricky explaining to me every Warhammer 40k faction. Hope you enjoyed the video. Let's get into it.
So after an entire episode of nothing but humans, we can now talk about chaos, which
I'm
involves
very
humans
interested
again,
in this.
but a little bit less. We also got demons and shit.
I just felt someone grab my ass.
What?
Like hard, Nick.
So, as I've mentioned many times before, we've discussed the warp, the immaterial, the hellish landscape, the purgatory dimension realm between the material realm of our existence. Now, in the warp, it's terrifying, horrible. There are demons everywhere. Things are crazy. All your minds and thoughts and emotions get projected there. It is both formless and empty. It is vast and tiny.
That looks creepy.
Obeys the laws of time and physics while simultaneously does absolutely nothing of the sort. It is a hodgepodge and a culmination of just unknowable, eldritch, horrifying shit. And there are 4 gods that permeate in chaos and the warp. These are the 4 major chaos gods.
Talk to me.
If we wish to learn about chaos, we need to learn about each and every single one of these chaos gods. First up, we have Khorne, and he is the easiest. Khorne
God of
is
combat, if I
your
remember
classic
correctly.
Satan. He is all about anger, murder, fighting, blood, guts, death. You ever heard the term blood for the blood god, skulls for the skull throne? That's Khorne. The whole idea is that he is all about the fury and strength of battle. He doesn't care where blood comes from so long as blood is flowing. He wants to fight and murder and carnage and slaughter and death.
Damn.
That is Khorne. Very simple to understand. Next up, you have Tzeentch, and Tzeentch is the god of change. However, the god of change, it's permeates in so many different other ways. He's the most eldritch of all the demon gods. He has this weird way to always be plucking at the strings of the universe. He's always conniving and scheming and doing his best to cause as much little bullshit as he can. Tzeentch is unknowable. Everything that makes sense, he will and won't do. Every future and setting and every type of destiny or fate is all foretold and also changeable. It is set in stone while also completely random. He knows what everything is going to happen and also that none of it's going to happen. You would ask Tzeentch a question. That question leads to 3 more questions. And those questions lead to the heat death of the universe, which asks 4 answers to those questions. And then he thinks to himself, what are questions even really?
Bro,
and are you even
going on and on.
questions?
So before he continues, basically this dude just sees every possible outcome and he has the answer for every possible outcome and every answer for non-possible outcomes. I get it. I like those type of characters.
Or you simply giving
those type of things interest me.
to answers and other horse shit. Tzeentch is just, I'm gonna fuck with stuff. He is yes and he is no. He is the understanding and he is complexity. He is unknowable. And that's what the God of Change is about. Very bizarre. And he likes birds a lot. I don't know why.
Was that bird in the game that I fought at the end of Space Marines 2? Was that one of Tzeentch's pets? Because that fucking thing looked like it was humongous. And it was a bird. So I'm just throwing a little dart at a little target. Hopefully I'm making land there. I might be right. I could be wrong, but we'll see.
Next up, we got Papa Nurgle. Papa Nurgle, he loves you for who you are. Probably not. He will murder you just the same. But Papa Nurgle is about rot, pestilence, death, and decay. He is the end of everything. Him and Tzeentch do not like each other very much because where Tzeentch represents change and adjustment, Nurgle represents stagnation and death. He is all about miasma and pestilence and large bloat and pus and organs and people just being sedentary, sloth. He is the idea that everything will rot and decay and die. Nothing is certain besides decay and death. All of us will end up the same way and broken down through just sheer never-ending decomposition. So the joke
I get why he doesn't like
is generally
Tzeentch.
because of that, because we all end up the same. We all rot.
Yeah.
We all die and wither.
Doesn't matter where you end up.
And he's got a general theme of course, pestilence and different kinds of diseases.
He looks like he represents
greed.
greed.
That's generally Nurgle. He's pretty easy to understand as well, and he's He chunk. Finally, we have the youngest of the Chaos Gods, and that is Slaanesh, also known as the Prince of Pleasure or the God of Unspeakable Excess. Slaanesh is generally referred to with sex, but it's not only sex, it's just that's a good avenue if you want to make stuff. Slaanesh is just the idea of the senses of the body being cranked to not just 11, but more like 17. So we'll discuss Slaanesh a little bit more when we talk about the Eldar, because they done fucked up, but it, or whatever, is mainly about just the excess of emotions. And therefore, sex is generally a large part of it. However, it's mostly pain and torture. Lots of pain, torture, but sometimes sexually related or drug related. Lots of drugs.
She reminds me of Pinhead from Hellraiser. If you know, you know. Pinhead does some weird shit like this too, where it's like he tortures you and he calls it's pleasure, his version of pleasure. Basically, they're not exactly the same, but Hellraiser's character is kind of like that.
Generally a large part of it. However, it's mostly pain and torture. Lots of pain, torture, but sometimes sexually related or drug related. Lots of drugs. Lots of drugs. Slaanesh gets off on everything. Extremes in happiness, extremes in sadness, extremes in pain and sadism and masochism. And of course that goes along with the sex part of it as well. It's generally referred to with sex because of the color scheme, very purple, lots of exposed genitalia. A lot of their models have like exposed nipples and stuff. And that is generally the theme you go for from a physical side, but it really embodies everything. Mainly pain and also the excessive amounts of emotion. So when it comes down to it, you'll find a lot of them have things like spikes or whips or any kind of BDSM style gear because it is unspeakable excess, the Prince of Pleasure, everything in excess to the point where it is just sheer frightening. That is Slaanesh.
Whoever created this character was a freaky ass mother. Whoever created him was freaky as hell. Cause only somebody freaky as hell would create a character like this with those type of thoughts. And then on top of that, the weapon is a whip and BDSM type of stuff. Whoa, buddy, relax.
In a nutshell, a little bit bizarre and a little hard to describe sometimes, but as we talk more about the Dark Eldar layer in this video, you'll understand it far, far better and far more than you'd want to. Now, you might be thinking, why would anyone ever want to join Chaos? They all look horrifying, screwed up, and just frightening things, right? Well, the thing is that, of course, one, your mind is put into the warp and the Immaterium, so you can be easily swayed by Chaos demons when they get into your head, especially if you're a psyker. Sometimes regiments of the less mentally strong people, whether they be civilians or say low-level guardsmen or conscripts, can be easily swayed by this and become chaos cultists and stuff, and they serve their dark gods and whatever god they personally prefer. However, and this might seem strange, chaos in their own right isn't necessarily evil. See, the warp is every manifestation of emotion and being, every soul, everything of existence. This includes all the good things. All the different chaos gods have another side to their coin. Khorne might be death, murder, slaughter, slaughter, but he's also got this weird sense of survival of the fittest, trial by combat, and honor. Khorne will never lie to you. Khorne will never stab you in the back. Khorne isn't about conniving and scheming. Khorne is about straight up mano-y-mano, you versus me, get in the ring, we're gonna murder each other hard right now. It may not be a good thing at the end of the day, but it is that other side of the coin. Him and Tzeentch generally don't get along because Tzeentch is that conniving schemer,
a trickster.
But he's also about the idea of hope. Where there is change for your predicament. There is change for...
I don't know why, but Tzeentch seems like something I would draw my attention towards in terms of want to know more about him, because like he just said, something about Tzeentch, I just like different possibilities and different timelines, different type of things like that. So Tzeentch, the fact that on the other side of his coin he has hope, because he loves to see the outcome that comes true. Because somebody in his type of characteristic, he's going to sit there and he's going to have all these possibilities in his head, but he's probably going to still sit back and watch and go, which one is going to come true? And I hope it's this. So that kind of makes sense for his character. That writing is damn near genius, bro. I'm not gonna lie. That characteristic is very genius.
There's change for your predicament. There's change for your problem. The hope of the galaxy, the ability to bend the world to your will, the idea that your fate is not set in stone, but a reality that you control your own destiny and can control it whenever you want.
It's kind of entertaining to him.
The changer of ways. that is Tzeentch. And of course, Tzeentch and Nurgle hate each other because while Nurgle does represent stagnation, death, and decay, he also represents finality. An ending. The fact that you can be mentally at peace knowing that you will end and how you will end. Fear of the unknown, fear of change is not present with Nurgle. With Nurgle, everything will rot and die, and that provides that finality, that ability that this is over. We are all the same, and we will all end the same. We know the meaning of life. The meaning of life is to live and die and rot. And with that, it brings peace of mind. Slaanesh is a lot more simple.
That makes sense.
While they are the excess of emotion, they are also the representation of emotion.
So Slaanesh is not one person. It's more than one thing. It's like one group into one thing. Is that what it is? Because he keeps saying they and not it or she or he. He did say that though. He said it, he or she. But the way he's saying it, he make it seem like there's more than one Slaanesh. Is it true? Am I right?
Slaanesh is a lot more simple. While they are the excess of emotion, they are also the representation of emotion. Slaanesh embodies happiness. Slaanesh embodies excitement and joy and pleasure, not only in the sense of the physical, bam, style of pleasure, but also everything else like food and drink and air on your cheek and sunlight, the feeling, emotion and feeling. All of that is also represented with Slaanesh. So you have to ask, why are they always represented as super evil skulls and spikes on everything and want to murder everybody? I don't really got an answer for you on that one. My assumption is that because mentally humans may think worse thoughts even if we don't act on them, and therefore they're projected in the warp more. That one's a little bit weird. I don't know.
I get what he's saying
right now, but I don't know. You need a super bad guy. You already got the Imperium of Man. You need somebody to be a little bit worse than them. So you got demons. Honestly, who cares? I just want to buy like a bird magician. Look at him. So cool.
See, that's the bird from the game.
Combining all this together on the tabletop, Chaos Demons are generally very melee based. They run in, go really hard. You have lots of summoning and conjuring, tons of spells. Generally a little bit frail, but they have special saves to make them a little bit stronger. You've got giant demons and smaller demons. You got hordes of little boys and tons of big guys.
Hordes of little boys.
Are, as they seem, demons. Nurgle is slow, Khorne is super scary in melee, you've got Tzeentch who are far more into psychers and spellcasting, and then Slaanesh who is all melee, really, really, really fast but squishy, but in lots of hordes of tons of melee and pain damage, of course. So overall, the demons are a huge part of 40k and a massive threat to almost every single faction with the exception of a couple. However, the big part about demons is also transferred into the other 9 Primarchs we didn't talk about, which are the Chaos Space Marines.
Now we're talking, Chase.
So Horse and all of his boys, all of them in the Primarchs, they have all also become Chaos Boys, and they all have their own special Chaos Legions, specializing in so many different things, just like the Adeptus Astartes, the Angels of Death, the regular Space Marines. Chaos Space Marines aren't a whole lot different than the regular Space Marines. They have the same armor, generally the same training and toughness. They just specialize in different kinds of things. And also a lot of the Primarchs have ascended into greater is it greater demons? They're demon Primarchs.
To greater demons?
Gigantic, horrifying man-demon hybrids that are pretty awesome, if I'm gonna be honest. They look really, really cool. But them and their associated legions that they are a part of are all kind of going out there and causing a large ruckus for everyone else. Considering the raw strength and firepower of a legion of Space Marines, imagine that entire legion just converting to chaos and immediately fighting you. It's generally pretty horrifying. There's a lot of them, so I gotta write them down, but you've got the Emperor's Children with Primarch Fulgrim, loyal to Slaanesh. These people, they are some messed up people. They're just sensory overload.
Jesus, look at that.
Tons of torture. And I think Fulgrim is a demon Primarch right now, and oh god, I am terrified to see what that man looks like. At least on the tabletop, because the Emperor's Children are not good people. You got the Iron War.
Real quick, has there ever been a time one of the Emperor's sons, the Primarchs, have they ever gone against each other besides the Horus Heresy? Has there ever been a storyline where one of the Chaos Astartes have gone against one of the Primarchs? Please let me know. And if there is a video on that somewhere, please let me know. If there is an audio somewhere, please let me know, because that had to been a fucking crazy ass storyline. Please, just tell me in the comments. If it hasn't, then okay, cool. But that has to be some type of dope ass storyline.
Emperor's children are not good people. You've got the Iron Warriors, which are kind of like opposite of the Imperial Fists, with Primarch Perturabo, I believe is his name. They're Chaos Undivided.
He looks like
kind of serve
a little bit like
Chaos in
Darkseid.
a general aspect instead of choosing one of the four. But the Iron Warriors are big on the siege and
God
fortification,
damn, that
and
looks
they're
dope.
basically entirely against the Imperial Fists and are a major rival. Perturabo, I believe, is also still alive, and I'm also very interested to see what he looks like, because Demon Primarchs are badass. You've got the Night Lords with Primarch Conrad Kurz. Conrad Kurz is dead, which is good because he's a sick fuck. But the Night Lords are generally about terror, terrorizing people, and terrorism. They're generally about fear, and rightly so. You've got the World Eaters with Primarch Angron still alive.
That looks a little
Also excited
badass.
to
Look at all
see.
the heads on them.
If you think you've known an angry person, Angron is the angriest son of a bitch you will ever know. Angron removed parts of his brain that didn't make him angry, so he could be angrier. Angron. Fucker's mad. You've got the Death Guard with Primarch Mortarion. They actually have their own special codex and their own major army on the tabletop. Mortarion himself is actually one of the models, and look at him. Look at him. It's so cool looking. Of course, Nurgle based, obviously. So very
I don't know if I
slow,
like
but very
that.
tanky.
Not my
You've
type
got
of
the
thing.
Word Bearers with Primarch
Looks nice though, but I don't know if I like it.
Lorgar is, I believe, still alive. I don't know what's up with him at the current moment, but the Word Bearers are generally the people who caused all the major problems in the beginning. At least I blame them for it. They're little assholes. You got the Black Legion with Primarch Horus.
Now, hold on. That looks it's the black and gold, man. It's the black and gold. That looks fucking nice. And then the skull that one right there. Yeah, that looks nice. That looks fucking dope. I like that one. Nah, I like that. I like the Black Legion. Now we're talking.
You've got the Alpha Legion with Primarch Alfarius
Damn.
Omegon. Chaos, I think. And then finally, you've got the Thousand Sons with Primarch Magnus the Nerd. The Thousand Sons also have their own book, just like the Death Guard. Magnus is also a tabletop model. He looks super cool, as
He
you
does.
can tell.
I will
And they're
admit,
all
that looks
super
nice.
heavily psyker and kind of Egyptian themed.
Okay.
They look
This is what we went against in the game. So, wait a minute. What was the dude's name again?
And then finally, you've got the Thousand Sons with Primarch Magnus the Nerd.
So, was he the one that was running the whole army in the game? I do remember hearing Magnus, but the villain name was not Magnus. I forgot the villain's name. I think it was Amari or Imurar or some shit like that. But this armor
Sons also have their own book, just like the Death Guard.
were in
Magnus
the game.
is also a tabletop model. He looks super cool, as you can tell, and they're all super heavily psyker and kind of Egyptian themed. They look pretty neat. But overall, with all of these Chaos Space Marine factions, you can play as a lot of different ones, but the main ones that you can really work at are standard Space Marines, Chaos Space Marines, as well as the Death Guard and Thousand Sons, as they are the most fleshed out, especially on the tabletop at least. See this right here? This is a really good way to describe the Chaos Space Marines. What the thick-headed fools with their broken corpse of an emperor fail to understand is that not only can they never defeat us, but they cannot hide or flee or shield themselves from the triumph of chaos. They are finite and we are unbound, undivided. They must not err, or they shall fall to heresy. All who fall join our cause. Every imperial fool who dares to open his eyes is a willing recruit. They strive merely to hold back our fury and might, and it consumes them. Thus, you can see chaos is inevitable. We lurk not only beyond their grasp and at their gates, we lurk within the darkness of their souls, on the tip of their tongues, in their tortured dreams. We are them, but freed from the shackles of ignorance. We are them, grown strong, evolved. We are them, but so much more. As hardcore as that quote is, the saddest part is they're mostly right. Chaos is basically unkillable. You could probably get rid of Space Marines, a decent amount, the Chaos Space Marines that is, but every soul that dies comes right back. The warp. Every Chaos soul will end up back in the warp. And depending on how hard you killed them, they will come back at some point. Every demon you banish will return at some point. Chaos is unstoppable. The warp is unending. And while maybe there is at some point some way to stop them somehow, the resources to do so, the requirements to do so, are so far beyond the reaches of man and the other races at the current moment that really it's just an unstoppable force that just keeps on coming and is just barely being slowed. Chaos is by far the biggest threat. They are without number, their legions are everywhere, and yeah, they're pretty scary. So I promise we're done with humans now.
This explains why the hell they are at battle all the time. I mean, I'm sure there's other factions that you fight, but I'm pretty sure Chaos is a big chunk of the reason why they constantly fight for years on end. Holy shit.
Now, let's talk about some Xenos.
The Eldar I remember from
So let's talk about the
first video I watched of
Eldar, or
his.
also known as the Eldari, which are a super hyper specialized and very technologically advanced race of, well, elf people. They were as well responsible for the creation of Slaanesh,
Oh,
the
and-
newest
yeah.
demon god. How'd they do that? Debauchery on a world-ending scale. See, back in the day, it was just Khorne, Tzeentch, and Nurgle. And the Eldar are very, very ancient, millions of years. These Eldar, however, have a bit of a sensory problem. You know, every kind of pain or feeling that you have is a little bit amplified compared to the normal. However, with Eldar, as their race advanced so excessively, and they became so self-reliant, and everything became so easy, there was no requirement for food production anymore. There was no shortages. Everything was basically done. Everyone was so comfortable. And that comfort breeded this weird sedation. And that sedation breeded the requirement for more and more debauchery.
Debauchery!
Debauchery!
When
SpongeBob is hilarious,
everything you
bro.
have can be so easily acquired, you will end up down this road of pure debauchery. All of the senses the Eldar had that were so powerful, things like feeling, happiness, sadness, and just evil and good, all needed to be satisfied and satiated. And the desire to satiate these senses grew more and more with worse and worse debauchery. It started off with things like sex and
legs.
drugs becoming so much more rampant because of these are the first things you generally turn to when requirements for living are so easily accessible. It would
Yeah.
get to the point that made Sander Cohen in BioShock look sane. All right, this is the kind of debauchery it led to. It was
Jesus.
constantly satisfying and satiating these sexual and sadistic or masochistic fantasies that only elevated and elevated. And this was species wide. People started going down darker, more depraved, and more violent paths as time went on. However, some people didn't entirely take to that. Some of the Eldar were looking at this depraved species that they had become and said, no thanks for me, dog, I'm good. And they bailed. These are the Craft World Eldar. They left on these giant continent-sized starships called Craft Worlds. They believed in learning the old ways of the Eldar and pushing away from this depravity and debauchery and going back to their main roots. And so they would segment themselves on these giant craft worlds far in the outer reaches of space. They even had this thing called the Webway. Remember what we mentioned about warp
Yeah,
travel with the
I talked about-
Imperium?
yeah, he
Well,
talked about it
the Eldar had
before.
something way safer called a Webway. And the Eldar Webway is actually like a pocket dimension kind of thing. And in that pocket dimension, there were also more horrible, depraved groups and clans that would spend their time in there. And if you imagine the debauchery was bad already, these were debauchery X10. So all of this
Jesus.
continued and it bloated until Slaanesh
Slaanesh.
just burst forth. All that emotion, all that mental, well, thought processes, I suppose, all of this in such a condensed space. Don't forget, this is all being shot, all
Into
their
the warp.
souls as well, into the warp.
Yeah.
All of this depravity, right?
Which goes back to what I was saying in terms of like the warp is basically what you put out into the universe, you get back to you. And so they put out all these souls, all these emotions that they turned up on 10. The warp said, all right, bet, and sent something that represents what it was that they were trying to, you know, pleasure themselves with, which was emotions, fucking feeling, all the things that he was talking about that Slaanesh represents. They were trying to, they were having fun with that. So then the warp said, all right, bet, you gonna put that out there, right back at you, bitch. So My theory about the warp, it's kind of, kind of a little Trotsky. That's what I kind of like about this lore and the story is that it takes so much from our stuff, from our stories, from our fucking nature and all that type of stuff, and it created its own little world. Shit's fucking dope, man.
So what happened? Boom! Slaanesh was birthed and killed off 90% of the entire Eldar population. Untold trillions
God
had their
damn.
souls ripped from their bodies and their actual fleshy bodies devoured by Slaanesh demons. The entirety of the Eldar race was eaten alive and their souls consumed to the Prince of Pleasure. All of them.
Jesus Christ.
Fucked up. It was so bad that it literally ripped a warp hole into the fabric of the materium called the Eye of Terror. That's literally this like quasi horrifying gateway portal from the materium and the immaterium right next to Cadia.
Oh.
And it is horrifying. So this
That's what happened to
Slaanesh,
Cadia?
also known as She Who Thirsts by the Eldar, slaughtered the entire population except for a couple. Those in the craft worlds were actually not affected by this as they were so far in the reaches of the galaxy. That crazy crack that birth of Slaanesh only affected the ones in the center. So these craft world Eldar were able to escape, but Slaanesh got their sights on them. Every time an Eldar will die, their soul doesn't just pass into the warp naturally. It goes straight to Slaanesh, craft world or not. What about those people in the webway? Well, imagine that giant birth
That makes
happening,
sense.
but they were only able to just barely get a grasp onto you. Slaanesh was just barely able to hold on. These people are the Dark Eldar, or also known as the Drukhari. The Eldar population right now is so massively small. It is minuscule compared to any of the other most of the other populations in the universe. The Eldar are consistently having issues trying to get their population up because as their souls are constantly being hungered by from Slaanesh, they realize their entire species is doomed. And
It's crazy how Slaanesh targets these types of species. Like she just has that taste for them because they didn't create her. It's just crazy, bro.
they realize their entire species is doomed. And they understand it very well. Since the time of the fall, our race has been haunted by what we, in our reckless pursuit of hedonistic indulgence, gave birth to. Though our dreams once overturned worlds and quenched suns, we are now but fitful shadows clinging to the edge of existence. All the stars in the sky cannot blot out the hateful glare of the red moon's eye. The birthing place of the great enemy pulses with all the malice of a demon that is dreaming, casting a
spelled
shadow
demon wrong.
over all we have ever done and all we ever shall. Every twisted strand of fate and casting of the runes leads me to this time, to this place, and it is clear that the final battle awaits me at the ancient Crone worlds, a conflict the likes of which has not been seen since the Monkai warred amongst themselves and their corpse of a seer fell to his traitorous son, is coming, and all my steps lead towards it, no matter that I walk other paths. I see the stars stained red with the blood of the Monkai, and though their wars do not concern me, I would gladly let them destroy one another. I know that to avoid this fight is to condemn my race to inevitable doom, and though all I see is darkness, I know that I will not flinch from my destiny. And now let's talk about cute plastic models.
Bro, I'm straight up not having a good time.
Now let's talk about
The
cute
first
plastic
playable
models.
race we have for the Eldar are the Craft World Eldar and living in those Craft World starships I mentioned earlier. And each of them have their own kind of Craft World, almost like a Space Marine Legion. Each Craft World is in itself its own special kind of group. And the Eldar themselves are very fast and rely a lot on trickery. They are squishy, a bit weak, but they're very in tune as psychers. Tons of psychers across the entire Eldar population, and their weaponry and abilities are fast and extremely hard hitting, but of course rather fragile. Understanding an Eldar's brain is an exercise in futility. They are all over the place in confusion and trickery on a whole galactic scale.
Sound like a bad case of times 10 ADHD.
They fight weird, they think weirder, and Eldar in their own right really rely on this to keep their species alive. They need to think about deception and the strangeness of what they do if they truly want to not be immediately murdered and slaughtered wholesale thanks to their entirely small population. However, I must say that it seems like their population is getting slightly better. These craft worlds hold millions upon millions of people, and as they continually, reproduce and have their craft worlds expand, losing a few people in battle, while hurts a lot, they aren't really losing what's extremely precious to them. It's not like every single death means the death of their species. It seems like they're kind of on the upturn a little bit. They're still a doomed race being sucked into Slaanesh every time someone dies, but they are definitely doing a little bit better than they were before. Eldar are fast, cunning, and what they don't make up for in tankiness, they make up for in extremely advanced weaponry. They also call humans Monkai, which is something I mentioned earlier. That is a derogatory slur for humans in the Warhammer world.
Has to.
Why is it called Monkai?
Sounds a little bit like fucking monkey to me, Chief. You have to call me no monkey.
Well, it's because you can't, in your game, call people monkeys. On the tabletop, that's exactly what I said. Not very tanky.
That's why they call them
generally pretty
Monkai.
squishy. Hit like
Damn, they come look nice as tabletop
fast,
things,
hit
though.
hard, die fast. Exactly how it sounds. They've been good for a very long time too. We bring only death and leave only carry-on. It is a message even a human can understand.
Wow.
Eldar. So, Drukhari.
They probably think of us as Monkai because they used to rule over us. That's what we are, the fucking Eldars, man. You ain't finna call me no Monkai. I know what the hell you mean when you saying that.
Let's talk about the Dark Eldar.
On today's episode of How Fucked Up Is Fucked Up.
That's fucked up.
That's fucked up.
So those people I mentioned in the webway, in the super deranged cults and the depraved people of the Eldar, in the webway, they didn't quite get a hold onto them. Slaanesh has them, but it has them on by the pinky finger. And they're slowly being consumed by Slaanesh, but they found out they can stave her off by doing Slaanesh things. The Dark Eldar are by far the worst, most horrifying, disgusting, depraved, and brutal race in all of Warhammer 40k. These are entirely a group of people whose full purpose to save their species from extinction, to go into planets, raid them, and take as many slaves as they possibly can to torture them for 1, 5, 10, 20, a million years, because that torture will keep them from dying. They look very BDSM style too. They definitely have a lot more spiky bits and they have a lot more of that kind of leathery black look.
So, note to self, Drukhari is a fucking people. Because they're technically working for Slaanesh, so that way they don't go extinct. That's crazy. It's fucked up. He wasn't lying. How fucked up is fucked up? That's fucked up.
They definitely have a lot more spiky bits and they have a lot more of that kind of leathery black look to them. But let's say you are an upstanding Imperial citizen, living life on a regular planet. You get invaded by the Necrons.
Oh shit.
The Necrons will shoot you with a deatomizer and you will be destroyed in a millisecond, and that's it. Not the worst way to go. You are invaded by Chaos Marines or something.
I know where he's going with this.
You take a bolter shot to the head or a chain sword across your stomach and you get cut in half. Painful, but not the worst.
You're dead.
The Orcs arrive. They beat you to death. Hurts, but, whatever. Tyranids, they eat you alive. It's pretty rough.
Jesus.
The Dark Eldar. This is going to get a little graphic. I apologize. You pray you die. You don't. You are instead taken as a human slave. Your life will be endless work and agony, 24/7. They will make sure you can't not die, as your pain satisfies them. They will hook you up to all manner of torture devices. They will inject pain-based stimuli drugs directly into your nervous system. They will slowly run razor blades across your skin. They will fillet you and pull out your teeth and your fingernails one by one. They will remove your appendages and your skin and wait for it to grow back so they can do it again. They will murder and torture and use the R word, it rhymes with grape, your entire family in front of you and do the exact same thing to them. You yourself will also be rhymes with grape anywhere and everywhere possible. And this will occur for 20 years until you are no longer satisfying to them. And then you will be contorted, crushed, and twisted into some form of trophy. A fleshy trophy, or a ring, or a couch, or a TV stand, or perhaps a wonderful hat, while you are, of course, still alive and breathing. And you will become a moaning, fleshy trophy for eternity.
What the fuck, bro? Jesus. God damn. That is sick. That's hell. That's hell. Remember what I talked about with Hellraiser? If you have ever seen Hellraiser, that's exactly what that is, bro. I swear to God. If you have not seen Hellraiser and know nothing about it, bro, check it out and you will know what the fuck I'm talking about, bro.
And that is what happens when you are taken by the Dark Eldar. They are the most depraved, most horrifying race in all of 40K. They look the part, and they do it so they all don't die. They are literally forced to do this, because if they don't, Slaanesh's grip will get harder, and they will have their souls pulled away. So long as they keep doing this, Slaanesh is like, "You're doing good, man. You're doing solid. You keep that shit up, you elf-eared bastards." That's the Dark Eldar. That's the Drukhari. They are horrible. On the tabletop, they're actually kind of like Eldar, but more extreme. They are even squishier than the Eldar, but they hit generally even harder. Fast attacks, skirmishers, really quick, speedy, like get around them, do a lot of damage, get away kind of stuff. That's most of the Dark Eldar. Look up the definition of grim dark in a dictionary. You'll find a picture of the Dark Eldar. And Sev from Public Commando. A quote from Mr. Vecht. "We are the lords of despair, masters of terror. Dread and agony are our meat and wine, and they are plentiful indeed."
Jesus.
Dark Eldar. Some of the Harlequins. Clowns.
What's the matter, Andy? Don't you want to have some fun?
The Harlequins are a bizarre race of Eldar. They're demonic clown performers. They're like a weird mix of Sander Cohen from BioShock and Jin from League of Legends, but in a more clown theme. They're artists of death and perfecters of their craft. They do not belong to Craft Worlds or any of the weird Drukhari people. They guard something called the Black Library, which is this giant tome of never-ending knowledge deep in the heart of the Eldar webway, and also guarded by their god named Kegorok, I believe is how you pronounce his name. He is the laughing god, but it's the Eldar's laughing god?
He looks sick.
And these are the Harlequins, the Harlequin clowns. These are Eldar clowns, okay? So imagine the things that an Eldar, these depraved individuals, would find funny. And this is the god of that. It's a horror clown. These are gods of horror for us normal people. For them, they're like, oh, it's so funny. They're all dying horribly. Honk, honk. They're very bizarre and difficult to describe. They've escaped the ruinous powers of Slaanesh somehow, but their main thing is guarding that Black Library. And the Harlequins just... they're demon clown performers. They're barely any models on the tabletop. They're good in melee. They're demon clowns. I'm
no
not
one
sure.
uses them.
I got a quote. "It is too easy for an Eldar to..."
Does anybody use these clowns? Let me know. They seem a little not well represented, so just let me know if you use them.
Embrace the obscene virtues of chaos, for Slaanesh is nothing more than a manifestation of the Eldar mind in its most wild and unconstrained form. Human morality is meaningless to the Eldar, and to the dark side of the Eldar mind, all life is to be expended at a whim. Cruelty and generosity are but the impulse of a moment. Beauty and sensuality are virtues that can be expressed in bloodshed just as easily as in song. To an unfettered Eldar mind, there is neither sanity nor madness, but merely a wave of perfect existence fulfilled by its own savage momentum. They're very strange. The Harlequins, Drukhari, Eldar, they are an anomaly that make humans seem completely easy to understand in comparison. They range from rekindling their civilization to horrifying murder and also clowns. They are all over the place, but honestly, they represent quite well and are rather interesting, especially with the whole Slaanesh murdering everyone bit. So, yeah, Eldar. Now, bugs.
Mom, they following me, Mom. They following me. These the bugs.
These the bugs.
Tyranids. Now, you want to talk something a lot more fun, a little more simple than all.
You know what's crazy is that the Tyranids don't seem like bugs to me. They seem like alien, but they don't seem like bugs to me. Now, if you want to talk about bugs from Helldivers, them bitches look like bugs. These don't look like, they look more like xenomorphs to me type shit. Like, you know what I mean?
Now, you want to talk something a lot more fun, a little more simple than all this crazy Eldar shenanigans? Let's talk the Tyranids. They're bugs. Do they look like Zerg? Hell yeah, they look like Zerg. You want to know why they look like Zerg? Because they were actually supposed to be what Zerg were. Apparently StarCraft was supposed to be a 40k game in the beginning, hence why they look so much like Eldar, Zerg, and the Imperium of Man.
Okay.
Like, kind of Space Marine-y, those Marines, huh? They look a little bit Space Marine-y to me.
Oh, I didn't even pick up on that.
You really fucked up on that one, Games Workshop, didn't ya? Tyranids are a giant infestation of unfathomable proportions. These are giant, extremely bio-advanced hive mind organisms that are basically all about absorbing as much biomass as they possibly can to evolve and mutate to be extremely potent and powerful and kill and eat anything in their path. They are probably the least evil faction in all of 40k because all they want to do is eat shit. They want to nom nom the entire galaxy.
It doesn't matter what it is.
Angry and we food. Also, this Tyranid hive mind has a presence in the warp. In fact, Tyranids in their own right have a massive presence in the warp. They have a thing called the shadow in the warp specifically, where when they are coming in to invade a planet, they have this weird ability to kind of cut off the warp on all the psychers on that planet. And how do you get help across the stars? Well, you need the warp because you need that for interstellar travel. So with people unable to call for help from the Tyranids, these are just easy pickings. And an entire giant hive fleet comes out of orbit and just will massacre, absorbing all that biomass and turning them and all of their other Tyranids into even more advanced monsters. They come in so many varieties too, all based on what is important. Tiny little ripper swarms for scouting and having little dudes eat people up, to the Hormigons, Termagants, and Gene Stealers, all the way to the Hive Guard and the Exocrines and the Swarm Lord, to Hive Tyrants and their giant battle fleets, and even something as crazy as the Hierophant Bio Titan. The Tyranids come in all forms
just like the Titan
depending
from
on what they require. They are extremely good at anti-biological weaponry. There is no way you could plague them or blight them. They have extremely strong armor, carapaces and such. Tyranids are nigh perfect organisms and are pretty spooky when it comes down to how they handle all of their genetic material. Keep feeding them, they'll keep evolving. They keep on creating new horrifying organisms to spread across the galaxy. And you want to know what the most terrifying part of the Tyranids is? We might be surrounded. There have been around 6 or 7 Tyranid hive fleets, Behemoth, Kronos, all these different kinds of hive fleets, and they've all arrived in the galaxy from different points. Different sections of the Milky Way galaxy have had different Tyranids come through. And that is horrifying, because as far as we know, we could just be surrounded on all sides by Tyranids. The only reason you may not hear a whole lot about Tyranids is because it's a little bit hard to have a bunch of story off of one hive mind genocidal monsters. All these giant bugs swarming in, killing and eating everybody and evolving. I mean, as cool as there are, there's some cool characters, the Swarm Lord, Old One Eye. You can't really have a whole bunch of major character-based stories around them. As awesome as they are, they're simple. They want to eat you. They want to eat you and absorb your biomass. They are simple bugs. If you want something a little more complex,
they're simple. Don't worry about
Gene Stealer cults.
I can have all the pot I want, I get around faster than walking, and wherever I need a seat, I can just sit on my balls.
Gene stealer cults are a special brand of Tyranid that can slowly infect themselves into different kinds of society. And by infecting them, they can rise up to where they all pray and believe in these regular humans, pray and believe into their Tyranid hive mind gods. And these broodlords and I think they're called patriarchs all can turn an entire world all based into gene stealers, and these are called gene stealer cults. An entire hive world of the Imperium can be turned into nothing but servants of the Tyranid masters just by infecting them and screwing with their genetic code a little bit. They also have this cool like Mad Max look, which is really neat. They are definitely one of the bigger threats to the Imperium besides Chaos. I keep saying biggest threat to the Imperium. They're up there though, because you, dingus, stepped on a bug in middle school. Asshole. There is a cancer eating at the Imperium. With each.
Wait a minute. Wait. We're going back to the Tyranids. Where the fuck did the Tyranids come from? Did he say where they came from? He just said they just exist. So does that mean that they just came out of nowhere? And what does this hive mind look like? I'm not really interested in the gene stealers. I'm interested in the Tyranids. I fought them for 6 hours straight, goddammit. Damn near 10. I want to know where the fuck they came from. He probably told it and I didn't hear it. So just let me know in the comments.
There is a cancer eating at the Imperium. With each decade, it advances deeper, leaving drained, dead worlds in its wake. This horror, this abomination, has thought and purpose that functions on an unimaginable galactic scale. And all we can do is to try to stop the swarms of bioengineered monsters it unleashes upon us by instinct. We have given the horror a name to salvage our fears. We call it the Tyranid race. But if it is aware of us, it must know us as nothing but prey. Tyranids, they're cool. But are they as cool as the Orcs?
I've heard about the Orcs. I know they're in the first Space Marines, but I've heard about them.
Orcs. I fucking love orcs. So, yes, the green monsters, the green tide, the green skins. These orcs, they are in fact a race in 40K. The orcs are as exactly what you expect them. They have archaic weapons, they're big boys, they have axes, and they have got big old teeth, and they want to kill everything, and there are so many of them. The only reason they haven't taken over the entire galaxy is they can't stop murdering each other. Jesus. Orcs are so cool. Orcs don't have philosophy. Orcs don't have existential crisis. What matters is who's the biggest orc. You listen to that guy because he the biggest orc. He big orc knows best. You win through the power of imagination. Of all the races I have battled throughout the galaxy, the orc is the hardest to comprehend. They wage war with machines that should not work, care little for strategic gains, and are just as likely to slaughter each other as the enemy. How does one battle an enemy that defies all logic? As an orc, you're enjoying life. You're enjoying the life you're given. Your whole life and job and purpose is to get up and beat each other to death because you can. The biggest orc is the man who understands everything. He is the boss. And orcs have this really weird, like, big, dumb, stereotype British accent, which is just hilarious to me. Those are orcs. You fight. You like to fight. Your whole purpose is to fight. You wage war because you want to wage war. You got your boss over there, and you better listen to the boss, because if you don't listen to the boss will squish you and make you an example for the other orcs, and then you can't fight
for the other orcs.
Dead. And orc dead can't fight because orc dead. Orcs they scrap together machines out of parts that don't make any sense, and because they believe, they have the mental imagination that machine will run, it'll run. If that machine's out of gas, you're driving that machine with your fellow orcs, and the biggest orc is behind the wheel, and you run out of gas, some orc behind you is like, oh Zog, we're out of gas. And the big orc is like, no, we're not. I filled the fucking gas tank up earlier. And all the other orcs are like, oh yeah, you did do that. And then you turn the fucking mech back on, and it works again. Does it have gas? Probably not. But it works. The power of imagination. They paint things red because it makes them think it goes faster. They paint things purple because it's the sneakiest color. You want to know why? You ever seen a purple orc? Didn't fucking think so. Orcs are also like ancient as hell. They're back in the Eldari time frame. But back then they were called Orcs, and they were much larger and scarier and far more intelligent. Now they're just orcs, and they're big, dumb, and they smack things. But they're pretty spooky. They're not very well armored, but they hit really hard, and it's called the Green Tide because there are so many orcs. There are about as many orcs as there are Tyranids. Maybe more, who knows? But they keep on, you know.
He never showed what the Tyranids look like on tabletop. Is that not like, are they not out yet? Is that what it is or something? Or what's going on? He never showed what they look like on tabletop. I know there's orcs on tabletops. I've heard a lot about orcs, which means they've been around for years. So what about Tyranids? Why not any tabletops for Tyranids?
Maybe more, who knows? But they keep on, you know, murdering each other, so it's not too bad of an issue. Orcs are entirely comic relief. Their stuff is slapped together that makes no sense. Their vehicles don't work the way they're supposed to, but they work because they think it works, because they imagine that it works. Orcs care only about who is the biggest orc, and they will follow the biggest orc. And then if they want to be the biggest orc, they'll challenge the biggest orc. And then when they go and they issue a wa is just war in orc, they murder everybody and everything in this giant tide of green orcs who are just excited to be hitting something. They don't care that they're hitting Eldar or the Imperium or Tau or anyone in between. They're just so they get to beat shit up. That's orcs. And on the tabletop,
see, look at that. Jesus.
And they're really fun. I have never met a salty orc player. I have never met someone who plays orcs and is ever just a bad guy or that guy. Orc players have this kind of fun to them because when you play them, you are completely submitting yourself to RNG. So here's the thing. Guardsmen, Imperial Guardsmen, when they shoot, they roll a dice, and on a 4 up, they'll hit their target. They have a 50% chance. Space Marines, pretty good. They hit on a 3 or higher because they're well trained. Adeptus Custodians, they hit on 2s because they're just super well trained. Orcs, they hit on a 5 or higher. But if they roll a 6, they get to make another shot with anything. From the dinkiest pistol to the biggest rocket launcher. It doesn't matter. Half of their stuff will blow up on a whim. One of their medics, if you roll a 1 to heal someone, you fuck up your surgery and you just kill an orc. They're so wacky and silly. But the thing is if you roll well, you roll high, and you keep rolling high, you are going to crush people. And if you don't, you lose. I mean, that's what you get when you play orcs. That's what happens when you play orc. It's a coin flip.
That sounds like a headache.
You can't be a salty bitch when you play orcs.
But it does sound fun.
Things won't go your way. It's just the roll of the dice. You're playing a dice game. But if you're gonna have fun and you want to be stupid and you want to be silly, you're gonna play some damn orcs. But on the opposite side of the fun part of this, let's talk about the Necrons.
What did Bricky just say there?
Let's talk about the Necrons.
Okay. Sounded like something else, Bricky. Let's hear it one more time. I gotta let the feels there. I'm about to say, wait a minute, Bricky. What'd you just say?
The fun part of this, let's talk about the Necrons.
A little too close there, Bricky. A little too close there. I'm not gonna say what I thought he said. All right. Let's talk about the Necrons.
The Necrons are spooky, scary skeletons and very grimdark again. They have a much more fleshed out lore than before. Back in the day, they were just undead Egyptian space terminators, and they still look that way, but now they actually have a story. So way back in the day, you had the Necron tier. Kind of see a theme here: Eldari, Eldar, Krork, Orc, Necron, Necron tier. So the Necron tier were this race of generally
that looks like a nice concept art.
People. Not because they were personally shitty, because they're live.
Wait. I'm sorry to interrupt. This is not a robot. This is a person with whatever that is. That's the concept art. Is that what they look like? Is that what the Necron tier looked like before they were robots? I know he talked about it in the lore explain video, and he kind of brushed past what they kind of look like. I know what happened to him, but were they okay? Let's just keep watching.
Kind of shitty people. Not because they were personally shitty, but because their lives were awful. They were ill-fated to a horrible existence of like radiation and a terrible planet they lived on, and everything just really sucked. Being a Necron tier was just really depressing. They really were looking for immortality. They were extremely reliant on the hope that they would eventually find the key to living forever and just stave off this horrible nature that they were thrust upon them, and therefore they could become the most most dominant race in the galaxy. And they found this group. They're called the Old Ones. Imagine them kind of like the Forerunners in Halo or the Xel'Naga in StarCraft, right?
Or
These
the Titans.
Old Ones
I could be wrong about that one.
Strong, pretty much omnipotent beings. And they, of course, knew the key to immortality. So Necrons went to them and said, please, show us your ways. And the Old Ones said, piss off. Not really.
I remember
he
talked about that.
About it, but they did not want to share their secret of immortality with the Necrons. The Necrons, of course, took this very well and waged war with them, kind of under this united banner. The Necron different dynasties didn't really like each other, but under this one man, the Silent King, he thought the best way to unite his race was to do this giant war with the Old Ones out of spite for them keeping the secret of immortality to them. This was known as the War in Heaven, and this is actually like a multi-stage war, because during this War in Heaven, they discovered the Star Gods, a whole new race of people known as the Catan, or the Catan. These Star Gods were also very much like Old Ones, almost omnipotent beings, and they too had the key to immortality. And so the Necrons went to them and said, hey, can you help us fight off the Old Ones? Can you help us kill these Old Ones, you, the Catan? And the Catan said yes. And in fact, we can help provide you with the immortality you so desperately seek.
Yeah, I remember he talked about this in that first video.
The Necrons decided to make a pact with the Catan to allow them to accept this generous gift of immortality upon them. But this, of course, had been a horrendous trap, and the Necrons were dragged in chains to this biotransference where their flesh was stripped from them, replaced with nothing but a metal hollow shell.
They were people, and then they got turned into machines
from their body and fed to the Catan. And the Catan fattened up. They got chonk on the souls of the Necrons. As this was their plan all along, they consumed the flesh and souls of the Necron tier and turned them all into unwilling robotic slaves just to serve their will. And then with their newfounded Necron army, they pointed their guns at the Old Ones, and the Catan continued their domination of the stars and their genocide, complete and full genocide of these Old Ones.
He didn't really go into a description like that in the first video. He kind of brushed past it a little bit. This is way more descriptive in a crazy ass story. God damn.
Best to stave it off, they even created other races, the Eldari and the Orcs, to try to fight off the horrifying Necron army and the Catan above them. But there was absolutely no possible chance for them. And the Old Ones were absolutely extinguished across the galaxy. Their entire race completely removed. Full on 100% genocide. However, during all this, the Catan, so just infatuated with their victory, started fighting each other for fun, for sport, and for small differences, doesn't matter. The Catan, with these overpowered people, they're gonna eventually hit each other at some point. And as they began just menially fighting each other, the Eldari and the Orcs actually started pushing on the Catan's borders a little bit, giving them a little bit of a run for their money. And as this continued, this is when the Silent King, who retained his consciousness, decided to leap into action and start a full-scale revolt against their Catan masters. And this revolt was bloody, as the entire Necron army was surged off to destroy these star gods. They were able to, just after suffering horrendous
I remember he talked about this too,
were able to turn the tide of the war. And they took these Catan and they blasted them, because as these star gods are unkillable, they were able to break them into thousands of shards and entrap them in giant stasis vaults to now actually be slaves to the Necrons. And with the Necrons having the entirety of their old gods enslaved to them, they realized that soon their race was about to be attacked by the overcoming new races, the Eldari and the Orcs. And so what they did is they retreated into giant stasis tombs in order to preserve their energy and their strength for when one day they would be reawakened and they would be able to rule the galaxy that was rightfully theirs. And then some dingus Adeptus Mechanicus guy diddled with a green console, and now the Necrons are back and they see all these these primitive races on their lawns, and they think, get the fuck off of it. The Necrons are back, super advanced, and they are here to reclaim the galaxy that they so rightfully believe is theirs. Now, at tabletop, they're a lot like that. Tons of undead Egyptian skeleton robots that when they die, they just get right back up because they keep on reanimating. Hard to kill, tons of crazy stuff. You can use the Catan themselves as units to fight with. It's pretty cool. The Necrons are one of the three major events in 40k. The Horus Heresy, the Fall of the Eldar, and the Awakening of the Necrons are all pretty substantial events. And the Necrons themselves are pretty dang cool as well. Here's a good quote from a wonderful Dawn of War.
You know, the Necrons, they have a pretty interesting story. And of course, a fucking Mechanicus is the reason why they're back up and running. Holy shit, that shit is crazy. I was locked in. The storytelling that he's telling of all these species, these factions are interesting. Now, if I ever were to go into tabletop, look for any of these factions? No, I'm more of an Imperium of Man kind of guy. And I'm seeing that as I watch this whole video. Clearly, they're not for me. I don't think if I was to do one from this, it probably would be, it might just be one of the Chaos Astartes. No, I don't know. I don't see myself using any of these factions. I'm not gonna lie. But these storytellers of this, very interesting.
Lucky creatures, as long last you have found the tranquility of death. I was like you once, clinging to life and blind to the truth. When I uncovered the truth, I too shuddered and paled with fear. Deep in these catacombs, I was remade. Here, my brethren slumbered for eons while the living grew like weed. My Lord knew this day would come. He had plans for us all. We would purge this world once more. So come, poor victims of life. We will grant you tranquility in these crypts. Kronos will be a tomb world once more. Necrons are also pretty smug. Trazen the Infinite especially.
Mr. Steal Girl.
But speaking of dickheads, last race, let's talk the Tau.
We made a fucking walkie.
The exact
Tau
formation
Empire.
of the Tau Empire is not entirely understood. However, a long time ago, many thousands of years ago, in the 40k world that is, some Imperial navigation vessels were going around through different areas, and they saw a primitive race, blue people, smacking each other with sticks and stones. They thought, nah, dumb Xenos race, who gives a shit, and they bailed. Then this giant warp storm occurred right in that major area, unable to be breached. Then, once that warp storm 6,000 years later subsided, hello, those little sticks. Well, they decided to actually have no war of any kind and all just unite together under one flag of the Tau Empire. And now they have gigantic starships and Gundam robots and lasers and railguns and mechs, and they are here to ruin your day for the greater good. That is generally the Tau Empire. They have this kind of feeling of this homogenous group. All species can go underneath the banner of the greater good. The greater good is their idea of the fundamental increase and help of all. In fact, they are most likely the most like the Covenant in Halo, where they have the overarching prophets, being the ethereals, who are actually kind of dicks and like to pull at strings a little bit, but then you have all these different races directly underneath them, and they all work together in this big group as this large, foreboding race that tries to spread their weirdly pseudo-religious influence across the galaxy. The alien is not intrinsically evil. Do not hate him. Pity him, his ignorance. Seek to understand his differences and equate him with his inadequacies. Only then will he accept his place in the greater good. That is generally the Tau. And if you're kind of wondering like what their mainly big shtick is, well, they're all about big robots and mechs. They have laser rifles and rail guns. They got giant mechs with tons of missile pods and heavy rail rifles.
Jesus,
and rail
all
guns,
that from a fucking warp
burst
storm
cannons and
for
ionic
6,000
accelerators
years?
and void shields and all this stuff. And that is generally what the Tau's all about. But you're probably thinking, Bricky, this doesn't sound that evil. This doesn't sound very grim, dark Warhammer.
But that's your point.
And you'd be right. The Tau Empire really don't have that much of a horrifying, grim, dark style like everybody else. They're much more younger, new age thing. In fact, they're probably a lot less evil and a lot even better than they are now back in the day, because they liked having like that good guy faction. But a lot of us who really like the dark, depressing style of Warhammer didn't really like it that much. So, see, the Tau get a lot of hate, and a lot of that hate isn't necessarily
like Transformers.
unjustified. It's mainly from a tabletop perspective, but as you can see from all the visuals I've shown you recently, they don't really fit in the 40k universe very well. They lack that super dark, dramatic, kind of high gothic level the Imperium has. They don't have the weird kind of like grungy stuff that Chaos and the Orcs do. And the Necrons and the Eldar have their own specific style as well. The Tau really do look like something out of Gundam. And while it isn't a bad thing, it does definitely not fit too well. There's that. There's also the tabletop problem. In tabletop, Tau are horrible at melee combat, but exceptionally good at range combat. So they blast everyone from really, really far away, and they have a million rules to make it so that it's nearly impossible for you to get into melee combat. So it basically just forces you to bottleneck the game into one specific gameplay style, which is gun to gun. And if you're doing gun to gun, they're gonna win every time, because they're the Tau, and the Tau are really damn good at shooting. So it's one of those things that make the Tau generally rather hated, and a lot of different reasons for that.
So does anybody play with the Tau?
This is actually one of the things I wanted to end this video with, is that the Tau, while they have their issues, you should not be discouraged from playing them. I'll make plenty of Tau weeaboo jokes, of course I will, but it's all generally in good fun. Anyone who legitimately doesn't want you to play a faction is an idiot, and you shouldn't be giving them the time of day. You pick what you think is cool and what you like. In Warhammer, especially now, factions get better and they get worse. They grow and then they fall. You should only be playing what you think is cool. You like the look, you like the models. If you're talking tabletop, that is what you should be going for every time, is what you think is badass, because things change all the time. But the universe of Warhammer has so much going for it. Every faction has something interesting, every character has a story, and there's a million stories to be told. The universe is vast and exciting, and while it is dark, depressing, and horrible, that is the damn charm. And out of everything I've told you in these two videos, if anything you could take away is the reason why so many of us are so into this series and why we like it so much. Because with so much variety, such an expansive universe, and so much that can be done, you can find yourself having a pretty great time. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope it has been informative.
I like how Bricky's so passionate about this, because his passion, it really shows. And from somebody like me that's new to this shit, I kind of fuck with it, man. I like it. These factions did not interest me. I'm not gonna lie. The Eldars in their darkness, that's what the fuck got me though. That was very interesting. That also got me. The Drukhari, if I remember correctly, the Drukhari specifically got to me. That shit is fucking creepy, bro. Slaanesh and how she controls all of them, that storyline has to be done somewhere. I don't care. I want to see that done, because that storyline it's a good storyline. If I was to choose a faction, it would be one of the things from the Imperium of Men. So I think I'm gonna look into the different legions of Space Marines and something else. If there's any other videos around that area that you guys want me to watch, I will happily watch those. And if there's any videos in terms of these stories that you want me to watch, I will watch those. I've seen the comments of all the videos you guys want to watch. I want you to know right now, we're fucking watching them. I'm watching all of them. I promise you I'm gonna get to them. I swear to God, I'll never lie. Never mind. I just told a lie right there. But I'm not lying about this. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you on the next one. See you later, Chief.